Hi guys, welcome to UnZipped, the podcast where we invite professionals working within the fashion and beauty space to discuss their own personal experience of working within the industry, as well as professional insights and career advice. Today's guest is Fergal Doran, who is the co-founder of Future Fashion Fair and is also an ethical and sustainability compliance officer at multiple retailers. You're obviously very heavily involved in trying to make fashion a lot more sustainable and a lot more ethical. What initially got you down that avenue?
So I went to uni in Manchester Met. I studied fashion buying and merchandising, and during uni there wasn't really much uptake on the whole sustainability thing because it was 2013, 2017 is when I went, and it was weird because the fashion industry was obviously progressing towards it, but they weren't quite there and teaching it. So when I came out of uni, I started sort of looking at sustainability stuff. I started doing merchandising first. My career started in merchandising, and then I was like, I don't really want to produce more products that are already like adding to the waste. So I was like, okay, where do I go from here? Can I get anywhere? Because I didn't have any sustainability qualifications, which is a lot of the time you need when you're going into sustainability. So I said to my lecturer, Lisa Trencher, she's just the best person. She has helped me so much to do everything. I was like, what can I kind of do to get into sustainability? And she was like, well, try compliance. So there's two sides to compliance and sustainability. You've got the compliance side, which is factory audits, making sure that factories are like up to ethical standards and they're not treating their workers wrong. And then you've got the sustainability side, which is a lot of project management, like waste and things like that. So she was like, go into compliance because that's a nice route in to understand all of that side of it. So I started as a compliance assistant at a job in a toy. That wasn't a toy company. That's what I am now. It was a licensed apparel, and really enjoyed the actual job. But generally, the people in the office weren't that great. But we won't go into that. So yeah, that's how I sort of got into it. I was very much asked to do. Well, I asked my lecturer to where I should go, and how the kind of other side of it what I do on the side. That kind of came about at the same time. So I kind of switched my whole Instagram. I had this moment of clarity. I was like, I don't want to be just looking at all these, flicking through videos that mean nothing. I want to like have some meaning. So I kind of switched to all of I started following Slow Fashion Movement. I started following Fashion Revolution and all of these other big sustainability Instagrammers, and started to learn more information. Then I saw an advert for a job going. It was called the Events Coordinator for Slow Fashion Movement. So Slow Fashion Movement is a global movement, sort of like Fashion Revolution, but just on Instagram. They do actions across the world, basically. They've got a massive India team, and they're such good people. So I started doing the events for them, and that was like during COVID? I think it was 2021 I started doing that, and then it kind of led to me getting a job in compliance. So that's sort of how it's taken off and where it's going.
Amazing. Yeah. That's kind of, and what originally got you into the sustainability side? Is that something you knew you always wanted to go into?
Yeah, I did. I always kind of knew that was where it was going. So when my first ever vision of fashion was when I went and worked at Evans for a week. You know, like you do in year 10, you go and work for like a week's work experience. I went and actually worked in Evans in Arcadia in London, and I absolutely loved it. And from then I was like, I want to change the fashion industry. I want like things to be better for everyone in the supply chain, and that's kind of where the vision came from. And then it just turns out that sustainability is a way to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So yeah.
And with do you have anyone when you were starting that you sort of looked to for inspiration from that, or were you seeing someone else do a similar thing and that's what piqued your interest?
I think it was just I love learning. So, and sustainability and compliance is always adapting and changing. Like, there's so many new legislations coming in, there's so many new little things that you can do in sustainability, and it's constantly progressing. And I think that's why I loved it so much, because I can't sit still for 5 minutes. So for it to be progressing so fast and in so many ways, there's such a broad spectrum to learn about that I could just dive into anything and like deep dive into specific things in sustainability and learn about it and be like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then move on to the next thing very quickly. And you're just constantly learning about new things and ways to better yourself and the industry. Yeah. So that's I think sort of why I loved it so much.
It's so fascinating, and honestly, even hearing you talk about it, my mind's a little bit blown of where to even start, because when you do think of fashion, it is, well, the whole reason it's making profit is off the whole consumerism and consumption and how we just are as a society in that sense. Where would you suggest that fashion companies do start when it comes to becoming more sustainable?
So I would say the compliance side, so getting your factories in order. So let's say pick a medium business. I'm not going to say a name of one, but let's say they've got a factory base of about 60. That's a wide spread of factories. I would try and then pull that in and go and work out where the factories are, how many workers they've got in, have they got audits, and sort of dive into that supply chain and dive into where you're getting your clothes from. Because if you don't know where your stuff's coming from, your customer's not going to know, and the customer is the one that drives all of the change usually. So that's where I would start, in the kind of compliance side of it, and then you'd progress from there, and you say, so with my current company, we're doing environmental assessments on 5 of our factories. So that basically means that's another step in the process of saying, where are you at with your sustainability? So we would dive then into the water usage, electricity usage, are you using renewable energy and stuff like that, and that's where that comes in. So that's the next step, and then it just kind of progresses, and then from there you can kind of understand, and you've got a good understanding of your factory base, then you can decide, because you've got that knowledge, you can go, okay, this is a good way to go, let's move on, let's progress on that line, and then everything just kind of stems off from there. Basically, you just need to have your foot in the door to then go, right, I can go. Which is sometimes quite difficult, because most companies don't really know how to do that. I don't really know how to start.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's why they need people like you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why you got me.
And do you find it difficult when you are talking to companies about becoming more sustainable? I imagine you get quite a bit of pushback, because the sustainable option isn't always the most profitable. And obviously in business, that is important.
That's what it's about. Yeah. I would agree with that. I think that some businesses find it very difficult. I think the smaller you are, the more difficult it is. If you haven't started already, so you've got the small brands who are already sustainable, and they've worked their way through already because they're so small. Then you've got like the medium businesses that never started it and don't know anything about it and don't really want to spend the money on doing it because they'd rather just have the profit in their pocket. And especially during this current time, I can totally understand that. So yeah, it is tough. It's just trying to say, you're right, sustainability isn't always profitable, but I think it does sell. Like sustainability sells very, very well. Yeah. And consumers love to hear about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say, I do feel like, so part of what I do when I'm for people who don't know, I do have a recruitment agency as well, so I speak to a lot of candidates and people who work in the fashion industry. And a lot of people at the moment are saying that they actually don't want to work for a company that isn't sustainable because they don't see almost the longevity of that business because it doesn't have those things in practice. And even just, so my little sister, my family are very like eco-friendly. My mum is like the craziest like nature woman you've ever met. And same with my sister, she's actually studying marine biology.
Oh, amazing.
I know, how exciting. But she is very big on sustainability, and she's always coming to me with, I've bought this secondhand things, or I'm thrifting this, or, and like trying to uplift her old clothes. And she's 19, and all of her friends are like that. And I think there is almost like a new generation or a new wave, or definitely a lot of motion behind fashion getting more sustainable. Where do you sort of see it going in the future?
Yeah, I think the younger generation is really pushing it, and I've seen that a lot as well. They do care a lot more. They're given so much information now, and it's so hard for them to distinguish whether it's right or wrong. But yeah, I think that they are driving it. I think in the future, it will definitely be a bigger thing. You can see it now with companies. They are the company that I work for now, factories are now preempting what's going on. We've got some factories that literally are saying we need to do this because we've seen it with other customers. So that's the kind of next step is preempting what's going to happen, so you stop it from happening. That's going to be in shock.
Sorry, I just hit a fly. That's not very ethical of me.
That's fine. So yeah, I think that's where it's going. It's kind of the factories now care about it as well, which is great to see because China is such a horrible place. I really want to go because I love China so much. I think it's such an interesting place to go, but also to work. It's very interesting and like you don't really know what's going on there. It's not a horrible place. I do actually really like it. But yeah, I think the direction it's going is everyone is moving towards it. And I think there's a two-parter. Many people say the consumer is driving it, but then you've got the massive companies, like the big retailers, I don't really want to say any names, that they can also drive it. Like consumers do drive it, but a lot of consumers don't know anything about it, so they'd rather someone just tell them. And that's what a lot of companies are realising now, is they're realising we should just do it, and don't shout about it, just do it, and then it's done. So the big companies are starting to do that, like, I'm going to say Tesco's are really good at it. Georgia, Asda are also really good at it. And they're getting the next step. Primark are actually really good at it. They don't really shout about it much, but they've got a massive ethical team. And they're all really nice people. So it's really funny because when you work in the field of sustainability, especially when I was working my previous job, I got to meet so many of the other compliance officers and managers because we had this joint initiative for the factories in Leicester. So obviously Leicester's really, really poor at the moment because of the factory situations. There are factories closing like every day because of things that happened in the past, and they set up this thing called Fast Forward, who, similar to what I was talking about earlier with the BSCI, they effectively set the standards for audits. So they would have a set of standards. They say, right, BV, which is Bureau Veritas, would go in and they would then audit the company to that standards and then report back. So they send out a big, sometimes 70, 80 page audit, which is ridiculous for an audit. And you get back all of this information, and then what's been happening is all the brands that do work in Leicester, they've come together, and the sustainability teams have gone, we need to work together to fix it because otherwise it's not going to be fixed. And I think that is another step in the future, is collaboration between companies across the board for similar factories. It's something that I want to implement in my company at the moment, is talking to our competitors. And there is this law called competition law, but it doesn't necessarily cover sustainability. So you're able to talk, basically competition law is you can't work with your direct competitor, like JD Sports and Foot Asylum can't work together. It's against the law, but with sustainability, it's allowed. So collaboration is encouraged, basically, and I think that's another step forwards, and it's going to be the next step, is working together to better the whole supply chain, to make it more transparent, and consumers can then understand what's going on.
Yeah, how do you feel in your view? Because I know that there are a lot of new laws coming in and new legislation's expected to come in, and I think it's in France that they already have been rolled out.
Yeah, it's
so
called EPR, French
yeah.
EPR, yeah.
Talk to us about that then. Go on, you seem to know a bit.
Well, I had to do it in my job, and to actually understand EPR, you can't just go on the internet and work out what it is, because there are companies going, we'll do it for you. No, don't worry about it. We'll do it for you. And it's like, well, no, I don't want you to do it for me. Just give me the information and I'll work out what I need to do with it. But French EPR is effectively Extended Producer Responsibility. That's what it stands for. And it basically is putting packaging, it's all about packaging, and it's putting where you're going to put it at the end of its cycle. And for our company, we don't actually have to worry about it. We don't have to put the EPR logos and everything on it, because we're not selling to the end consumer. So the likes of the big retailers at the end, so Aldi, they will have to put all of this stuff on, which is a bit weird because we give them all of the products and they go and sell it. So really we should put the things on the packaging, but according to EPR law, it doesn't really work like that. So it's kind of like a loophole, but effectively it's all about where you put the packaging at the end of its cycle, and that's basically that's a new legislation that's coming in Germany as well. I think it's across the EU.
Yeah.
And it will come eventually into the UK, but they don't really care in the UK.
Why? Why do you think that is?
It's funny because I've seen, this is kind of what I've thought and I've seen recently, is that in the UK it's very much brand and consumer led, not government led. So the government don't really care about it, so brands and consumers will push it further, which is good and bad. But then in the EU it's very much government led. And I've found a lot that the consumer cares less about sustainability than people in the UK, because it's all pushed by the government, so they just follow along basically. Whereas the consumer in the UK and the brands, they know a lot more about it because their government's not helping them, and they're pushing it themselves, which is what the consumers want. So it's a weird difference. I just think that the government don't really want to know. They have other matters to attend to, like trying to run the country into the ground. So
Turned into a political podcast all of a sudden then.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
You asked why.
How would you say, so kind of going back to what you were saying, when if you dealt with a massive fast fashion giant, like all these big ones now, like Boohoo, for example, they're absolutely huge and obviously very big in Manchester. How would you recommend, or do you think there's even a way for a company that is that big and on that scale to become like more sustainable and ethical and all the rest of it?
I think, first of all, I'll say that Boohoo, it serves a purpose for two reasons. First of all, it gives people in the likes of China, Pakistan, jobs. And it also gives an option for people over here who can't afford to go to the more sustainable shops, an option. So they are fully engrossed in the market now. They cannot change, they cannot move, or they'll never go away, sort of thing. They have a really good ethical team. I've met them, and they do push it as much as they can. But I think that when it doesn't come from the top down, it's very difficult. When you've got middle management trying to push sustainability and the people at the top don't really care, it's very difficult. I think Boohoo can change, and I think they can force the whole market to change. If they change, everyone else will follow. But it is very difficult with the amount that they produce, the speed that they produce, and the materials that they use. Because they're using a lot of virgin polyester or virgin materials, virgin materials is just brand new materials. And polyester is plastic taken from fossil fuels. I think it's like 4% of the whole fossil fuel production is created for polyester. And it doesn't sound like much, but when you actually put it into scope, I could get some figures, I'm not going to. When you put it into perspective, it's a massive amount of production, and the big brands, it's not just Boohoo, it's across the board with fast fashion. They are creating huge amounts of waste, and I think the ways that they could change is the end, two things. How they educate their consumer, because their consumer doesn't care, and if they teach their consumer how to be better, then they'll care a little bit more. And then that slight difference, like one or two people, say in every 10% of their customers, let's say, change their opinions and change their views on how their waste, and then start recycling and send it to other places. That's fantastic. That's a massive change for Boohoo's customer base. That education, and then also like the waste management, what happens to the end of life of trying to make it more cyclical, the production. I think those are the ways they can change. It will be very, very tough and very slow, like 2030, maybe 2050 it's just very slow because of where they buy their products, what they buy their products from, and how they view it in the first place. So
yeah, because I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion as a consumer, I feel like the way that the world's going, and you're right, there'll always be a place for people who are buying on a budget, and also as well, as a consumer, there's a lot of perks in terms of you getting the latest trends very quickly and all the rest of it. But I think just as a society, we are becoming so much more aware and so much more like trying to look after the planet and things like that I really do feel brands' arms are going to be forced. Like, you will have to, whether it's, you know, from the government or not, you will have to comply and become more ethical in order to have that longevity.
Yeah, that's definitely coming, and it will come with legislation and other brands pushing them, because if you've got competitors doing it and you're not doing it and customers are going to them, that's a loss of profit. That is literally, you can see that on paper, and you can say, well, we're not doing this, so we need to be doing this because it's not selling. We're not selling anything. So yeah, it will 100% come, and I just hope it comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm saying, because I feel like it's one of those things that's been spoken about for ages now, like years and years and years. And I feel like now, personally, for me, this is the first time that I've really felt a lot of movement and a lot of sort of pick up, and it's snowball. When would you say it started becoming a lot more of a thing on your end?
I think when everyone started doing their kind of 2025, 2030 analyses of when they're going, oh yeah, by 2025 we want 25% of our production to be recycled polyester. I think that's kind of when it's set in. I think COVID was a big thing as well.
Really?
Yeah, I think that hit people, and it hit the supply chain, that's for sure, because China just completely shut down. Like, no one can go. Even now, you're not really allowed to travel there. My boss, he is going in October for the first time in 2 years, and he used to go 7 times a year.
That's crazy.
So it was literally just everything shut down, and I think everyone went, whoa, okay, now we need to look at our supply chain, kind of diversify, move it to other places, where can we move it closer, and stuff like that. So a lot of people went to Leicester, obviously, and then closer places like Poland, Turkey, across kind of Europe. But again, it's way more expensive, and the only place you're really benefiting is the transport costs. But when it started, I couldn't put an exact date on it, but I would say for me, it was around 2020. That was when I started believing in it, and I think you can kind of see a gradual change. I mean, sustainability has been a thing. I mean, fashion revolution started back in 2012 when the Rana Plaza. Do you know Rana Plaza?
No.
You know about the whole, basically a building in, I can't remember where it was. It just fell down. Then there was audits done on it, and it was all fine. But like Matalan were accused of being in there. Various other companies were accused of being in that building, and it just completely collapsed and killed quite a few people. So fashion revolution started after that. I'm pretty sure it was 2012. So it's been a thing for quite a while. And one of the ladies who runs Fashion Revolution, she's been doing it since 1997 or something like that. So she's been pushing this stuff for a while, and so have many people. And it's just been such a slow process. So it really depends on who you talk to when it started, because each person, it started for a different time. But that's an interesting question, actually. I'd quite like to ask kind of our audience, because when we run the fashion fair, we have obviously a wide audience of people, of men and women and other genders, that come in. So it'd be quite nice to ask that question of when did you start thinking of sustainability, because it's different for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. It's so funny. I thought you meant our audience, and it's like, it's literally just me and Fergal in the studio. I was like, that's the audience.
That'd be great if we had got an audience of one.
And how, so I'm a little bit embarrassed, to be honest, getting a little bit embarrassed at my lack of knowledge on sustainability in the industry, to be transparent with you, which is why it's so great to have you on. I think a lot of people are in the sort of the same shoes as me in terms of they care about the planet. Like, I really do care about the environment. That's what I've been brought up to do. And I wouldn't say I'm like a wasteful person, always recycle, stuff like that. But how would you recommend, just for someone who is like a consumer, how can they be a lot more sustainable, or sort of make their own impact on the fashion industry?
I'd say first of all, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask anyone questions. Maybe not the people in the store, because they won't really have a clue where the products are coming from. I remember I went to a store and this woman, she was like selling really nice tops that were made out of sustainable product, and I knew they were because I know where they're from. They're from this company called Gildan, who are actually really good. And I was like, so where do you get this from? How do you know what it is? And she was like, I don't know, I just buy it online. And I was like, oh, that's so annoying. But yeah, definitely, first of all, just start asking questions. That is the main thing. Go and have a look online, because a lot of people now, like PLT, have a really good sustainability page on how to do better things, and they've got ways to do things. So companies will have on their websites page like this. So go out and look for stuff is first, and then just follow the pages on Instagram. Learning, it's just about gradually learning how to do better things, and I think Instagram, social media is a really good way to do that. You learn a lot of information. Like our page, we try and help our consumers. That's Future Fashion Fair, by the way.
Which we will get into.
We try and help consumers understand what fast fashion is. Not just fast fashion, but the whole fashion industry in general, like the supply chain, how things work. So I think just start gathering information. Do it very slowly. It doesn't need to be like a massive quick switch, because that's not what sustainability is about. Sustainability is very slow progress. It's like gradual, which is why it takes so long for companies to switch, because you cannot just go, right, we're doing all of this, because it costs so much money to do it up front, and then the profit you won't see for maybe another 10 years because it's such a slow process. But yeah, I think the main thing is just try and gradually gain information, and come and ask me questions if you want to. I'm here.
well, I've got you. I was going to say, with a lot of companies, I'm seeing a lot of like greenwashing, things like that. And yeah, we've got our new sustainable collection. And it's like actually not that many differences. But how, as a consumer, can you know the difference really with that?
It's really hard. Like companies are doing all the time. There's greenwashing, and then there's green hushing, which is even worse. So basically, green hushing is the companies that aren't doing anything, just staying as quiet as they can under the radar and hoping that no one will say anything about them. Greenwashing is a really tough one, because you can't really tell the difference between whether it's good or bad. I would say if it's a fast fashion brands making claims that their products are sustainable, that's probably not true, because of the sheer scale of where they're buying them from and how they're buying them. If they're buying a sustainable range from the likes of China or Bangladesh, Pakistan, or India, the people over there won't care that much where it's actually coming from. The people buying it, the factories that are actually producing it, they're just going to make the garments. They want the money. That's all they want. So if they're spouting out, say they're buying 10,000 pieces of a garment and it's sustainable, first of all, 10,000 pieces is not really sustainable. So just look out for the fast fashion brands doing it. I don't think that they're really very ethical, but it's the way that things are worded as well. You can have products that, basically the terminology that you use is very wishy-washy, so you can get around it very easily by saying certain words and not fully, basically not putting certainties. So like 100% recycled polyester, that's not possible in itself. So if someone's put 100% recycled polyester, it's like, no, that's greenwashing, because it's just not true. If you're saying made from the likes of made from recycled materials, that's fine, because the wording's not actually specifying how much of the product is made from it. It's just saying that. So that's how they kind of get around it, and it's rife at the moment. But there are greenwashing legislations, like you can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think the government brought it in I can't remember when it was, but they brought in some greenwashing laws to say you can't do that. So there were people pulled up from it, and there will be in the future, because I think that brands and consumers will out people in the future. I think that's the way it's going as well. So but it's very difficult to try and see and understand.
And how did you find it going into, because you worked at Missy Empire previously, didn't you?
Yeah.
How did you find it going in? And am I right in thinking Missy Empire, especially when you joined, definitely fast fashion brand?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So how did you find that going in? And
so basically, they were part owned by a bigger company. I was brought in as a necessity for the big company to
invest.
Yeah, that was part of the deal, basically. So I was brought in to help them there. So I learned loads off the company to help Missy Empire improve, which was great. But it was difficult because when, as I said before, when the top down, if they're not fully invested and they don't want to invest in the sustainable changes or compliance changes, it's very difficult to go in and change things. But did my best. And it was actually really, I really liked the people there. It was I learned so much as well. So it was a good company to work for. And yeah, I think that it was quite tough going in at first because I'd come from license. To be fair, the whole way through, I've always been in kind of not fast fashion, but it's not slow fashion, if that makes sense. So it's still producing quite large quantities or quite small quantities quite a lot. So the whole time I've been in the fashion industry, especially in Manchester, it's very rife for fast fashion companies. I've been in fast fashion most of my career, so to go into Missy Empire it was a change because it was just pink. And it was very different to what I've done previously.
It's a change because it was pink.
Yeah,
it was pink office.
Pink
blew me away.
Literally, it was bright pink. No word of a lie. Yeah. Pinker than your laptop.
Rose gold, actually.
Yeah, sorry. So just going in there was quite interesting because I've not worked with that type of brand before, so it was quite funny going in. I was the only guy in the office apart from the directors. So it was very interesting going in, and then the products that they produce, and also understanding that the buyers in fast fashion tend not to think about sustainability at all. So implementing things onboarding a factory was a big thing for Missy Empire. I created the onboarding process for them, and I told the buyers what to do in terms of they need to come through me. If they want a new factory onboarded, that's fine, I can do that, but you need to come to me first and tell me why we need them, do we have any other factories like it, and so on and so forth, things like that. So to change that process was, again, steady changes, but then once the buyers understood that was the process, it was very handy because you're just they would just come to you and say, I've got this new factory, I want it up, onboarded. So making those changes was the tough part and enjoyable part, really. And I'd say that was the only difficult.
Yeah, I'd say I feel bad for buyers at the moment with the way that it's going because, as you said, especially after COVID, import costs are just absolutely skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And when you've got that much pressure from above to keep everything quite low and all the rest of it, I imagine the last thing you think about is is it sustainable what I'm doing right now?
That is the last thing on everyone's mind, especially currently when jobs are being cut left, right, and rhubarb. When they're all being cut that quickly, they tend to cut back on sustainability. So they kind of conserve their sustainability projects and go, well, these are the only essential ones, we won't do anything extra. That's the first thing to kind of close off, and then everything else starts to change. The thing with buyers is I find that a lot of them don't actually know, especially in fast fashion, they don't actually know the price of an actual garment, which is awful because there's so many components that come into making a garment. You've got the labour cost, which is huge. This is where most factories will cut the costs if they can, is labour costs, because the material cost and the shipment cost and all that is fixed. You cannot change that. And you can haggle maybe slightly, but with the labour costs, unfortunately, that is the only place that they can then just drop the costs, and that's where you get people in Leicester not being paid a fair wage, so being paid £3 a week or £3 an hour or something ridiculous, or a day, I can't remember what it was. That's where the real issues are. So when buyers then start trying to cut costs or go back to suppliers saying, oh, we want it at this price, if they don't understand what the lowest cost can be, and they're just going, right, we want it at this price, they've not understood that this is the highest, this is the minimum cost it can be, to actually be legally made. And that's a massive issue. And I remember one of the old managers at Missy Empire, she tried to implement an open costings system where you basically ask the factories to say, right, tell me exactly how much everything's costing. And I don't know how well it worked, but it's a very good way for buyers to understand, especially in fast fashion brand, is to understand where the actual costs lie. And I think that's a problem for buyers, is when they're just shooting numbers out all the time, and it's quite difficult. But yeah,
I can imagine. Let's go into your own personal projects now. So obviously you got involved in slow fashion movement. How did that sort of get you into setting up Future Fashion Fair?
I love you went really close.
I know.
As you said, I worked slow fashion movement in 2020, early 2021, and that kind of gradually moved me into Future Fashion Fair. How it did that was it's a global movement, all online presence, and I wanted something more local and sustainable because I was just getting a bit bored of just doing it online. So I started a swap shop and met Mark from the Yard, who then introduced me to the space, and then Joe came on board, and we did our first fair in 2021, 25th and 26th of September, which we do every year now. We've got one this year, and I'll explain that in a minute. But basically how it started, we worked with Manchester Fashion Movement very closely on that first one. They brought a lot of the vendors along. They're a really, really nice movement. The two people that run it are great people. And they helped us basically get it off the ground. We had about, I want to say 20 vendors, and we had talks as well. And we didn't have any workshops, but the talks were very interactive. We sat in a circle and we were talking about loads of different things. So that's sort of the first one. Then we were so gassed about the first one being so successful over the 2 days that we decided to do another one that November. So literally quick turnaround, bang. And did that one, went really well. And then we've been doing them basically, we did 4 last year, and we've now turned them down to 2 a year because they're not sustainable for us, because both Joe and I and Neve, who's another team member, it's really cute, she came and volunteered at the first fashion fair, and she loved it that much that we just kept her on, and now she's one of the directors.
That's amazing.
Is going to become one of the directors.
Yeah.
So we've had long-standing members, which is great. So we did 4 last year, and we're doing 2 this year because, as I say, it's not sustainable. The amount of work that goes into creating an event because of the space setup and everything, it takes about a week to set it up. So now we've got our next one on the 30th of September, which is going to be massive. I think we've got about 25 vendors already. It's going to be really exciting, and yeah, huge. But we also do other things alongside that, so it's not just about events. We basically want to create our aim, and I have the leaflets if you want me to get one. Our aim is to create a community around Manchester with like-minded people and educate not just them, our community, but everyone around how to buy better, where to buy, and just give them general information of what to do in the fashion industry, or what's going on in the fashion industry. So that's kind of like our aim, and it's what we want to promote. So we're trying to work with partners for waste management and things like that. So we've got lots of projects going on the side. We also, mostly what we do is events, because that's just very easy to get people to come down and talk to us. So we also run an event every month at Dock 53 in the centre of town. Do you know, I think I mentioned it before, the big space in Piccadilly Gardens that's the containers and stuff. So we do an event every month there. So we don't have one this month, because we had one on the 1st of July, and we've got one, a night market on the 11th of August, which will be really fun. So we do those every month, and that's just basically to promote us, and we get about 4,000 people coming through. Amazing. So it's really, really good. And yeah, as I say, it's just to promote kind of what we do. So that's kind of the basics of what Future Fashion Fair is. And it's grown, and it's really nice to have the family that we've got now, which is good.
Yeah, and what's crazy is you are still in that early period, you are still starting it up and setting it up and all the rest of it, and it seems to have 4,000 people show up and sort of the traction you've got, and also have people bought in from day one,
It's really nice.
It's massive. You must feel so proud.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. There are obviously things I'd love to be able to do with it, moving forwards, but it is just about time and costs, because we volunteer. We don't get paid for this stuff, because it's so hard, especially if you're growing something from the ground up without any initial input. And it's difficult when you're going for funding and things like that. They don't really take events in as a project that they want to fund, because everyone can do events, unfortunately. So that you have to do specific projects within that field to then get funding. So for us, it's been very, very slow going, which has been great, and we're learning along the way as well. So yeah, I love it though. It is just so much fun to do on the side. Well, I'd love to do it full time, but
yeah. Well, could you ever see that in the future though?
Yes, to an extent. I don't know how much I would like to actually just run events. I'd rather do big projects.
Yeah.
So one of the projects that I'd love to do is manage the waste within Manchester. So there's huge amounts. I remember we talked to Suez, which are a waste company. They manage everyone's waste across. They're a huge company across the UK. And we were talking to them, and they were like, yeah, we receive 12, you know, the big bins that are outside Tesco's and stuff. They receive 24 of those per week filled of waste, of people just giving it away. And they don't actually deal with it. They've given it to another company who deal with it. And then it's funny, we were talking to them and she just goes, yeah, I think they ship it to a third... And I went, Ghana. And she went, a third world country? I went, oh my God. I just was like, sat there like, you just can't say that. That's awful. It was really funny. And then me and Neve were on this call and we just both went, oh. It was so funny. But yeah, one of the projects that I want to do with them is stop that waste.
Yeah.
Going to the likes of Ghana and a third world country, and keeping it in Manchester and reusing it, which is a massive undertaking, and that would be a huge project. But yeah, that's one of the projects I'd like to do.
Oh no, that sounds amazing. And just to sort of go back to Future Fashion Fair, talk us about your next event. Use the opportunity.
Use the opportunity, of course. So yeah, 30th of September. It's running from, I think it's 11 till 5. So during it, we have talks going on. We've got workshops. So we did last time we did a workshop. We've had a few actually workshops that have been so much fun. So one of the workshops we had was painting your own tote bags, and you buy them at the end. One of them was a workshop. What was it called now? Block printing, which is basically a Indian traditional way of printing, where you've got these little blocks, you stamp them and then put them on garments. And that's run by two amazing Indian girls who they go out to India every, I think it's 4 weeks or 8 weeks, and they learn about new processes. I say new processes, they're all very old processes that have been lost. And so they go to all these different regions. Really cool. So these two girls come down and they do an amazing job on just teaching people about all of these new, old processes. So yeah, workshops are really interactive, really fun. They're in the main hall, so anyone that's just there can just walk in, turn up and do it. And it also means that the vendors get to see what's going on as well. Because a lot of the time when we have talks, we have them in a separate room, but now I think we're going to kind of collaborate them. I'm not really certain on that yet, but whether we even do talks is a different thing, because we've had some really cool people. We had Carrie Summers, who started Fashion Revolution. She came down, really good to speak to her. Joe did a really good podcast. We film all of the ones there as well, so it's really cool. But yeah, she came down. We've had a couple of other really cool people. Carl from a new social media platform called Curve. I'll explain to you what that is afterwards. But Curve's a really cool new social media platform that he's created, and he came down to the talk, and he was super cool. And it's just really interactive, really fun. We want to get some good signage going up and interactive projects around the building so that people can join in, and we just want to get as many people down there as possible to kind of meet new people. I love meeting new people. So.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And with volunteers, is there still a chance for people to volunteer and join and stuff?
100%.
Amazing.
We love having volunteers. We do put a feeder out to all of the unis to get them to come down. With our volunteers as well, we have a program that benefits them as well. We've got a login on a government website. There's a skills login, so you can go on and you can basically learn about anything you want to on this website. So if you wanted to volunteer and you were serious about it, we offer that. And then there are ways that you can do the marketing, you can help us run the vendor liaisons, so like talking to vendors, building the actual event. So there's loads of little different pockets that people can join. But yeah, we're open to, we love volunteers, so as many as possible.
That's stunning. No, that's so good, because I do think there's so many people that will want to get involved in that. Like,
yeah, hopefully.
I mean, I'm excited. I'm like, where do I get the uniform, you know? With this stalls as well, are you still open to other vendors, things like that?
Yes, still very much open to vendors. So we have kind of a few options. We're going to go outside, so we have some gazebos, but we are happy for people to bring their own. It's actually cheaper if you bring your own gazebo. At the moment, as I said, I think we've got about 25. I need to confirm that, but we're looking for another 10, 15 maybe.
Okay.
So we want it to be as big as possible. Because we've got, so when we originally started, Mark was like, you have all of this space. And basically, he showed us the map of where the yard is. And he was like, there's the yard out the back, which can hold about 7 vendors, and then there's the side street which holds 25, and then there was a street out front, and he was like, you have this road, this road, this road, you can make it as big as you want. And we were like, oh my god, that's huge. So we have all that space to kind of branch out onto. We haven't done that yet because getting vendors together like that, and also the more vendors you get, if you don't get the customers in, it's very difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because the spread of cost is so thin that some vendors won't even get any money. So we've usually kept it to around 20 vendors, but we want to really push. We're going to massively push this one, and hopefully we'll get up to 4,000 visitors again.
Well, Fergal, thank you so much for coming on. I really do genuinely feel like I've just learned so much about the industry, and like even little things that I can do to be more sustainable and a bit more aware of where I shop and things like that. Future Fashion Fair, really excited to sort of see where you go with that, obviously, and how big the vision goes. So we're just giggling because I always get the order mixed up, but it's FFF, we'll just go with that. But yeah, I'm super excited to be there. Obviously, we'll 100% be there. And anyone else who does want to go, it's on the 30th of September. Whereabouts was it again?
So it's at the Yard, which is in Cheetham Hill. I can put a link. It's on our page, so yeah.
Amazing, stunning. Well, I'll also share that link for everyone as well. Hopefully see some familiar faces there. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, and I hope you found this super insightful, and we'll see you next time.